Hello, thanks for tuning in to the Los Angeles Times Envelope's Emmy Contenders chat series. I am, in fact, Michael Ordoña. Today we have the rising young star of Hulu's The Act, the Disney Channel's Austin and Ally, and last year's excellent indie Bodied, Mr. Calum Worthy.
Thanks so much, Michael.
Thank you for coming. As we were saying before the interview began, I'm really glad to have you here so I can not only talk with you about The Act, but throw some Bodied questions at you.
Well, I am very grateful for Bodied questions.
Yeah, that movie just was a bolt from the blue. I didn't know anything about it, saw it and said, this is great.
Yeah, I think it was a really excellent film for people that love battle rap and also just people that love movies.
Yeah, well, for the uninitiated, I'll explain a little bit about Bodied. It's an indie feature about a college student at Cal Berkeley. I think it's fair to say a bookish and very white college student at Cal Berkeley who is writing a thesis about the battle rap scene in Oakland and gets drawn into the battle rap scene, becomes a battle rapper himself. Eminem was involved. He was an executive producer.
Yeah, he was a producer.
How involved was he?
He was there the whole time. His fingerprints are all over this movie. He was involved in the developing of it and the way they developed the script and the writing of it. And obviously had some input on some of the raps as well.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about that. You've said that you had to learn to rap for it. Did he give you any pointers?
No, he didn't necessarily, but the other battle rappers in the film did.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I spent about a month and a half basically going to battle rap school, which consisted of me just hanging out with all these incredible battle rappers who I consider the poets of our time. I mean, these guys are truly unbelievable. They're like delivering Shakespearean soliloquies for a living. And they sat me down for hours at a time and just really taught me the art form. I could never be a battle rapper myself. These guys are way better than I could ever be, but they showed me how to fake it for a minute.
Oh, well, what's one of the keys to faking it then?
Treating it like acting. I found that the biggest similarity we have is that you really approach it like a monologue, and that's when the best storytelling comes out of it.
A monologue that's all about destroying the other person.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
Absolutely humiliating the other person.
Yeah.
Those raps are so well written. They're really a pleasure to listen to the lyrics.
It was a really tight script. And I mean, this movie was very risky. I knew that I was risking a lot doing this kind of film, especially playing a character that's both the hero and then you find out is the villain at the same time. And I was worried that audiences would have a hard time with that. They didn't, which was wonderful to see. But going into it, you worry about that because usually audiences are used to seeing a very specific protagonist and a very specific antagonist as well.
Right on. I'm so glad you mentioned that because I kind of see that as a link between that and The Act.
Yeah.
And that Bodied allows the protagonist to become a not nice guy at all.
Exactly.
So,
yeah. I love the idea of cheering for a character and then realizing that you actually aren't cheering for him anymore and questioning everything you've thought about him for the rest of the film.
Yeah. I mean, there is one really cool guy who's a battle rapper and he's your dear friend. And you totally betray him.
I totally betray him.
So horrible.
It's so horrible, and it's and I think it's shocking to the audience, and I feel like even more so what's even worse than the actual harsh lines themselves is the betrayal for the audience as well.
Yeah. Because as you say, people are used to rooting for one guy through, and in that movie, like, wait, do I really like him? He's not acting like a nice guy.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I say that sort of links to The Act, and that in The Act, the three main characters, I'll give a little recap of that. They're all extremely flawed. They all have a lot of shadow in them. For those who haven't seen The Act, I don't know why you're watching this, but you should see The Act. The Act is a Hulu true crime anthology series, the first season, which is this season. It concerns the story of Gypsy Rose Blanchard and her mother, Dee Dee Blanchard. Dee Dee Blanchard, probably for the money and possibly because she may have been suffering from Munchausen by proxy syndrome.
Exactly.
For the attention, forced her daughter to pretend to be very, very ill and wheelchair bound for her entire life. Dee Dee was eventually murdered, and her daughter and her daughter's boyfriend were charged with the crime. Calum plays the boyfriend. Oh my God, Nick Godejohn.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the plot. What is the show really about beyond that framework?
It's a character study. It's a character study into these very complex individuals who are, as I said, like very similar to Bodied, are both the protagonist and the antagonist at the exact same time.
Yeah.
I find it really interesting that people can be really good doing bad things and really bad doing good things at the same time.
That's interesting you put it that way, because you do see, I mean, Gypsy, after her mother is dead, keeps saying she did love me.
Yeah.
After she did these terrible, terrible things to her. And Gypsy acts as if she loved her mother, but did not act lovingly toward her in the end.
Exactly. Yeah, and you see people coming away from this saying they have conflicting feelings about all the characters. And I think that's very true to life. People are very complex, and people, we're not always the good guy, we're not always the bad guy.
Before I forget, I should mention that Gypsy Rose is played by Joey King in a totally transformative performance.
She's unbelievable. I mean, working with her was the experience of a lifetime. I was blown away every single scene. I remember actually the first day we worked together, one of our first scenes, we had to both break down, and she had to cry, and I had to break down as well. And we were in the characters, and we had spoken a little bit, but we were mostly just focusing on the scene itself. And then they yelled cut, and we were ready to go to lunch. And I remember just looking at her and saying, "You're so good. Like, you're just so good in this role." She's unbelievable.
Yeah, well, it's definitely nothing like her fans have seen her do before. And her mother is played by this up-and-comer named Patricia Arquette or something.
Yeah, she's new to the scene, but man, is she making her mark.
Yeah.
She's so great. My first day with her, working with her, she got nominated for a Golden Globe.
Yeah.
And so I was already a little nervous walking on set to work with her, and then that made me a little bit more nervous.
Yeah, she'll be duking it out with herself this award season for
Isn't that amazing?
for this and Dannemora.
Yeah, and well-deserved, too.
Yeah, and it's a transformative performance for her as well. I mean, she takes on a totally different characterization in this from Dannemora.
Yeah.
Very, very different. So I understand you were already aware of some of the facts of the case before the project came to you.
Yeah.
But in your research, what did you learn about the case as you learned more about it that blew your mind, that just amazed you?
Well, when I first started looking up Nicholas Godejohn, I found that every headline said just that he was a murderer, and that's as far as they go. And I found that sometimes that process of being convicted of a crime in the press can often dehumanize a person. My job was to find the humanity in him, and I really found it in my research. I found it so interesting that the person who interrogated him on trial said her first initial thoughts of him were that he was a very sweet, kind guy. And that's saying it after him just admitting that he murdered someone.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a very important key aspect to keep in mind as I played the character.
I don't think that was an act. I think that he's apparently on the spectrum.
Yes. Yeah.
So her impression of him is probably correct.
Yeah.
But there's something in him that allowed that kind of break. I wonder if you feel like you figured out what that was, what it was about his diagnosis that made him vulnerable to that kind of violent romantic fantasy.
I'm actually not too sure. I don't know. I made choices for the character myself, but I actually don't know what that is. I would love to be able to sit down with him someday and maybe find out myself and ask him some of those questions, but I'm not too sure. I do know that he while he does have many challenges and he struggled with a lot of things in his life, the core of him is very sweet, and he does have a very kind soul, which is very interesting for the character that's supposed to be the antagonist in many ways.
Yeah, well, or maybe a catalyst.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
you could see Gypsy developing this urge to kill her mother, and it couldn't become real until she met you.
Exactly. And we really wanted those moments when they are in love to be real, because for that moment they are the hero of their own story.
Yeah.
And I wanted it to seem like this. If you only saw 1 or 2 episodes, maybe you could actually think, oh, it's a love story. And it's actually very, very real for those two people, even though their love only lasted a small amount of time actually together.
Yeah.
But that was very important to us.
Yeah, that's a funny way to think of it, but again, hero of your own story, that's something that's been coming up a lot lately, but I can certainly see it for them, how they believed that what they were doing was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Certainly doesn't make the right thing to do.
Exactly.
So I know you weren't able to meet Nick yourself. Nick Godejohn, I don't know the guy, Nick Godejohn.
Yeah.
Were you able to speak with anyone who knew him, his family or friends?
We were lucky because we had Michelle Dean as one of the co-creators and the
Right.
co-showrunner of this project, along with Nick Antosca. And she has spent years investigating this case and had spoken to everybody involved. She was an incredible resource. she was able to answer all of my questions, and she was really able to guide us along the process. I felt like I hope I didn't annoy her, because I think I sat down and grilled her for hours at a time, just asking every question, because I knew that she had the answers. So I was like a sponge around her.
Well, can you tell us what some of those key questions were for you and some of her key answers?
My biggest question was the love real? Like, was it real, or was this part of an act? And she said that it was. But from what she could tell, it was very real for that brief moment that they were together. Mm-hmm. It wasn't coming from a dark place. It was coming from a very real, sincere place.
I would have been shocked if she'd said it weren't.
Yeah.
That would have seemed very, well, because I'm only really familiar with Nick Godejohn through your portrayal of him. Yeah. So that certainly is how you played it. It's just such a web. I would imagine that Joey King's transformative performance helped you with yours, because I can imagine stepping into that arena with her and seeing her that way, and it's setting you off.
Yeah, I mean, she really set the pace. Her and Patricia both set the pace, along with Chloe and Anna Sophia, for the show, and they certainly raised the stakes in terms of the quality of excellence that they were wanting the show to be. Because I came in on episode 4, so they'd already been filming for a few weeks at that point, and so I was stepping into their world. They'd already made it an excellent place to be working. Well,
speaking of that world, I mean, what I was thinking of when I thought of stepping into a scene with Joey King, since you didn't have so much time with Patricia Arquette, was if acting sometimes is about living in given circumstances. Were there facts or moments, real events that you stepped into that really clicked you into what you're trying to do with the character?
Yes. The moment that seemed the most intense, and it felt like we were really conveying these people the most, was the scene in the closet where we're waiting for the SWAT team to come in.
Yeah.
It had been the moment that I was the most excited and the most fearful to film, because it's their last moment of freedom, and for Nick, it was going to be his last moment of freedom forever. Mm-hmm. And so it's also them realizing the consequences of their actions, mm-hmm. and I was so excited to film that, but also so nervous at the same time, because I knew that there was so much at stake with that, not only for the characters, but also for the actors as well. And so Joey and I decided to just sit in the closet the entire time, even between setups and when they changed lights around. We never left the closet. Once we sat in there for about, I think, 2 hours, and they would change everything around us, and we would just hold each other, and we'd break down crying, and we really didn't leave that emotional state for the entire time. And when the SWAT team came in, we asked them to not tell us what they were going to do, but to just treat us as they would if they were actually arresting someone, because we had a real SWAT team. They weren't actors. And so when they came in, we didn't know what they were going to be doing. And we were able to just be the characters and live and breathe in that moment. And they removed us, and it was very satisfying as an actor, but also very intense as well. We both woke up the next morning, and we got in the car to drive to set, and our eyes were bloodshot, and we could barely open them.
That scene, I'm glad you mentioned that scene, because it's so strange and layered because of how it makes us feel about them. It's such a childish moment.
Yeah.
That they actually think they can evade a SWAT team by hiding in the closet?
Yeah, it really shows some of the true colors, and it shows how they were kind of naive to the consequences of what they were doing.
Yeah, and then as they hear the team come closer and closer, they're getting more and more scared. Yeah. That's a good scene to mention. Okay, so apart from that scene, can you think of any other moment in your entire run in the series that you feel like conveys who you think Nick is?
The pizza scene. When he's making pizza.
Oh, when he's in the pizzeria?
He's in the pizzeria and he's trying to make pizza, and it's one of the first times you see him outside of the world with Gypsy.
Right.
And you see him on his own. Yeah. And I think that's so it's a wonderful scene for me as an actor, because I was able to show what his real goals were. He wanted to be able to make things work, and he wanted to be able to do the right thing, but sometimes he wasn't able to do that. And even the simple task of making a pizza was very challenging, which I think set up a wonderful baseline for the rest of the story. Because if you think, well, if that was very challenging for him, then these other situations, he's in way over his head. And it's going to be really difficult for him to deal with someone who's the child of someone who suffers from Munchausen by proxy.
there's just one other thing I want to ask you about how you arrived at the way you portrayed him.
Yeah.
I know you studied autism, and his diagnosis seems very, very tricky to me.
Yeah.
Can you point to something you learned in your study of autism and specifically what was going on with him that you felt you had to convey, but that would be, I don't know, respectful to him and accurate in the eyes of the community that is concerned with autism?
So I spent, as you alluded to, I spent about 2 months leading up to it studying autism and studying what it's like to be on the spectrum. I worked with specialists. My uncle works in that field as well.
Oh.
And I also I spent time at a place that teaches and works with young adults who are transitioning into the workforce. Mm-hmm. And so I spent a lot of time just asking the questions and talking to the specialists. My goal was to try to figure out how someone on the spectrum sees the world. I didn't want this to be me doing any movements that seem like I'm on the spectrum. I wanted to truly feel and understand what that's like. Mm-hmm. So I also read numerous pieces of literature and essays from people who are on the spectrum describing what their experience is.
Oh,
because I really wanted to be able to see the world through their eyes and really understand what it feels like on the inside, mm-hmm. and hopefully that could then be reflected on the outside. I worry sometimes when actors focus so much on the exterior of the performance and not focus on what's going on in the heart. Mm-hmm.
All right, well, thank you for answering all those questions about the act. I'm now going to hit you with a lightning round.
Yes, let's do it.
Terrifying, I know. And please do direct your answers to camera 3 so we can get them together. All right, so what was the last show you binge watched?
Ooh, the last show I binge watched, Barry. I just watched all of Barry.
Oh, season 2?
Season 1 and now season 2, back to back.
So you're through season 2?
Almost.
Okay. Have you seen episode 5?
Yes, that was one of the greatest episodes of television I've ever seen.
He's got to win the Emmy for directing that.
He has to win every category: drama, comedy, documentary. Just give it all to him. That was unbelievable.
It's one of the most amazing half hours of television I've seen this season.
It was truly mesmerizing. Yeah.
I love the girl.
Oh, she was amazing. She was unbelievable.
There's a great story he tells about how they met her. So, what classic TV show do you wish you'd been on?
The classic Laugh-In. I was a huge Laugh-In fan growing up.
Good call.
And I thought that it was so wild and inventive. I just would have loved to have been in that world then.
To be like busting out one of those doors.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, what's the worst job you ever had, whether acting or not?
The worst job I've ever had?
Yeah.
Well, I've actually only ever really been an actor. I'm one of those grateful few that can say that they started young and I've just always been an actor.
Well, can you name an acting job without like throwing anyone under the bus that was...
So I helped out on an indie film because I'd never worked behind the camera before.
Oh.
So when I was a teenager, I was 16, 17, I thought I should really spend some time understanding what it's like to be on the other side of the camera.
Yeah.
And but I knew I wasn't qualified to do any of the jobs that people train to do. So I was basically just a PA on set. Who most of them go to film school beforehand because it is a very difficult job, but I was like the lowest of the low under the PA, and the PAs would tell me what to do. And I remember I had to help with the porta potties and getting rid of them on set, and that was tough. That was not an easy day.
Yeah, there are words you could use to describe that job that would be accurate.
Yeah.
All right, finally, is there a show, past or present, that you wish had gotten more awards attention or more acclaim?
Ooh, that's a great question. Oh, wow. Newsroom. I really liked Newsroom. And is that yours?
I love Newsroom. It's my favorite Aaron Sorkin show.
It's mine as well. I loved that show, and I did get some nominations, and it might have won a couple.
Jeff Daniels did win.
Jeff Daniels won, yeah. But I thought the whole cast was unbelievable, and the writing was so clean and crisp. I just thought it was a great show.
See, he's a fine young gentleman. he got Newsroom. All right, thank you so much for coming by.
Thank
really
you so much.
Appreciate
it's
it.
really fun talking to you. I really appreciate it.
Well, I look forward to your David Bowie biopic.
Oh, I would love that.
Let's put that out in the world. To see the rest of this entire interview or the rest of our Emmy Contenders chats, please go to latimes.com.